Hello everybody, my name is E-Train and welcome to E-Train Talks. My guest today is Sarah Scheerger, the author of Operation Frog Effect as well as several other books. She's a mother, a wife, a mental health provider, and an award-winning writer. Her other titles include Mitzvah Pizza and Are You Still There? Sarah, why don't you give the listeners a brief summary of your amazing book, Operation Frog Effect, which we'll be discussing today.
I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for having me. So Operation Frog Effect is a middle grade novel written in 8 points of view. One of the points of view is illustrated through a graphic novel format. I get into the heads of 8 different diverse 5th graders. There's one out-of-the-box teacher, a class pet frog named Kermit, a big mistake, which I can't tell you because it would be a spoiler, and the frog effect, which is a word that I just made up, but it basically means that everything we do can make a positive or a negative difference in the lives of other people. It's about kids standing up to make a difference for what they believe in. This out-of-the-box teacher does all kinds of unique things in this classroom. In her classroom, she does an egg drop where she takes, a raw egg, and the kids get to package the egg in such a way that it doesn't break when they drop it off the side of the building. She does a social experiment called the Whistler experiment, where she treats students differently based on their ability to whistle or not whistle for an entire day, which is really confusing for them, and they have to figure that out. She assigns them to do some social issues research projects, and the kids take a deep dive into their projects, which leads to some complications, and you have to read the book to find out what those are.
Okay. Really good ending. So my first question for you is, Sarah, why did you decide to write Operation Frog Effect through the characters' journal entries versus through the eyes of a single individual?
That's a great question. I really like writing through multiple points of view because of the ability to create conflict and drama through the different perspectives of different characters. As my regular job, my day job is I'm a school-based mental health provider, and I see that a lot of the things that people struggle with day to day are because they're seeing situations through their own perspective and forgetting to think about the perspective of others. So by getting into the heads of all the different characters and writing from their points of view, I'm able to create misunderstandings and conflict and drama, and I think that makes for a richer book experience. So I really like writing in multiple points of view.
Well, multiple points of view stories are one of my favorite types of books, so that's one of the reasons why I really liked Operation Frog Effect. Now, my next question is, which character do you relate to the most in the novel?
I'm happy to answer that question. I just want to ask you, do you have a guess?
This is a PJ Arway book, so I feel like it might be Aviva, the Jewish character, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, great guess. And I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but I just wanted to ask you. Yes, I definitely feel connected with Aviva and also with Emily, the two kind of girls that are struggling with their friendship. So part of the character of Emily was inspired a little bit by some of my experiences as a young student, although all the characters are fictional, but there's a little bit of inspiration there from real life, and I definitely feel connected to Aviva as well.
Okay, well, now for my next question. Did you ever have a teacher who connected with their students as much as Miss Graham?
I did. I absolutely did. And when you asked me an earlier question, I think I misspoke and I said he instead of she, because the teacher that inspired me was a male teacher. His name was Mr. Newbling. I had him in the 4th grade, and he was one of those teachers that made everybody feel like what they had to say mattered. He really listened to everybody. He made them feel like we could make a difference and make changes in the world. And so he was definitely a big inspiration for me for Operation Frog Effect. And when I began writing it, at first I wrote the book with a male teacher, and over time I decided to modify it and make it a female teacher, because there are actually a number of books out there with male inspirational teachers, and there are so many female inspirational teachers too, many of whom I've met. So I decided to make the teacher a female teacher, but he definitely inspired me for this book, and many of the things that happened in the story happened in our class. He did do the Whistler experiment, except that he didn't do it with whistling. He did it with another trait. I think it was eye color.
Wow, he really sounds like a great teacher, and it sounded like a great classroom experience.
Sure.
So, my next question, it's kind of an opinion, but I feel like the classroom frog is a metaphor for the experiences that the students face throughout the novel. Did that go through your mind while writing the story?
I love this question. And I feel I can't take full credit for the frog because when I submitted this story to the editor, I actually did not have a class pet in the story. And she suggested to me, what would you think about adding a class pet? And we considered so many different types of pets. But we decided upon a class pet frog because of the idea of ripples in the water. And if you see the cover, it's got a sweet little frog, and around him is all these ripples of water, which is definitely a metaphor for the fact that everything we do in this world can make positive or negative differences. Great question.
Wow. So I had no idea that there was just no class pet. If you didn't have a pet frog, would the story not be called Operation Frog Effect?
You are absolutely right. It would be called something different. In fact, I think the title I submitted it with was Because Everyone. There's a repeating phrase towards the end of the book that says, because everyone can make a difference, or something like that. So that was, I think, the original title, but we decided we needed something a little more spunky, a little more personality.
Well, I certainly love Operation Frog Effect. It's a beautiful title. And next, did you keep a journal like the characters in Operation Frog Effect as a kid?
I didn't keep a journal, but I did enjoy writing. When I think back to those years, 4th grade, 5th grade, early middle school, I definitely did quite a bit of creative writing for fun, and I see writing as kind of a coping skill. It's a creative outlet for me, so I really enjoy it, and I think it serves a purpose very similar to what a journal does, where you're just kind of getting your thoughts onto paper. And as an adult, when I provide counseling in schools, I encourage kids to keep journals because I think journals are very, very helpful. But my outlet was more creative writing when I was a kid.
Well, I too love creative writing, and I did have a journal. I used to write, like you, I wrote a lot of creative writing, and I wrote some pretty far out stories on my computer and in a journal. So, we're gonna kind of shift gears here away from Operation Frog Effect to just being an author. Was there a particular moment in your life when you knew you wanted to become a writer?
I think I always had a dream or a fantasy of becoming a writer, even as a kid, because I just loved reading so much, and I loved writing as well. But I think in retrospect, when I look back at my life, I think I really gravitated towards writing stories at times in my life when I had challenges. So like periods of times that were transitions, the beginning of middle school, complicated friend relationships. When times were harder for me, those were the times that I felt like I wanted to do the most writing. And as I saw that pattern, I thought, wow, that's really a good outlet for me. And then I sort of put that away, and I went to college and I studied to be a counselor, and I became a mom, and I did all those things. But when I started reading books to my children, that's when I decided I really wanted to try again, and this time very seriously, to be an author.
Well, you certainly succeeded, because now you've written several books, and 2 books that are now PJ Library or PJ Our Way books. Can you give us an idea of what stories, if you are working on any stories that you're working on at the moment?
I'm always working on something because I really enjoy having a project, but I don't have anything I can talk about yet. So sort of in the publishing world, I can't say anything until it's been announced. So I have projects, but nothing I can specify about.
Well, I'll certainly be looking forward to the announcement of that particular project, or many projects if you're working on many. Finally, if you could be any character in any book, who would you be?
Okay, this is a great question, and I had to think about this one quite a bit because there's so many characters that I find inspirational in books, and many of them come from challenging situations. So I had to weigh the characters' positive traits, which are very admirable, with also their complicated situations they were in, because I think it might be fun to be a character, but not always fun to be in their complicated situation. So I came up with a couple names. I definitely have a lot of respect for Mia Tang from Front Desk. She is a really admirable. Do you love that book? Yeah, it's great. And I also think it might be fun to be Hermione from Harry Potter. She's just so smart and cool, and she knows all the magic tricks and all the wizarding tricks.
Those are 2 characters that I loved in the books, and Harry Potter's a movie, so I loved her in the movie as well. I loved Emma Watson as Hermione.
Yes, me too.
So that has been my guest. My guest today has been Sarah Scheerger, author of Operation Frog Effect, a middle grade read which I highly recommend. You can find Operation Frog Effect on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. If you're interested in learning more about Operation Frog Effect, listen to my book review podcast on this meaningful, realistic fiction story. Thanks again for joining us today, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
And to all of you listening, I hope you found today's podcast interesting and insightful. That's all, folks. I'll see you in the next one.